All right, hello everybody. Welcome to the Aftershock NASA Shock Propagation Prediction Challenge webinar. Let's go ahead and let's get started. So here's what we're going to cover off today. So I'll start off by giving everyone an introduction to freelancer.com. From there, we will have Dr. Sam Yunis, who will give us the challenge background, as well as more information about the requested outcome. Then I'll walk everybody through the challenge schedule and how you can participate and then submit into this challenge, and also discuss the idea of eligibility. And then we'll close off with some live questions from you guys and answers from there. So before we get started, I want to quickly introduce myself and the speakers today. So first of all, my name is David and I work on the freelancer.com enterprise team, and I'm going to be your host for today. We also have the challenge holder with us, Dr. Sam Yunis, joining us today, who'll be taking us through the challenge background and the requested outcomes. And we also have Alex Adamczyk from LMI joining us for Q&A. So a couple more things before we get started. Number one, this call is being recorded and the recording will be made available on the challenge page and sent out to everybody who has registered for this webinar. Number two, please use the Q&A panel for any questions that you have today. We have a dedicated portion of this webinar for your questions, so please make use of that. And please use the Q&A panel instead of chat. So I'll be looking mainly towards the Q&A panel for all of your questions. And lastly, if we don't get to your question today, or if we can't answer your question today, look out for the answer to that question in the FAQs document that will be attached to the challenge page. If you also need closed captioning, that will be available on the YouTube recording link. So if you need closed captioning, please check out the YouTube recording. All right, so to kick things off, here's a little bit about freelancer.com. So this challenge is being hosted on freelancer.com, which means that you have to go through the freelancer.com platform to enter into the challenge. So what is freelancer.com? Well, freelancer.com is the world's largest freelancing and crowdsourcing marketplace by number of users and by number of jobs posted. And to date, we have over 56 million users globally and over $4.5 billion in jobs posted. When we talk about this idea of connecting users globally, we mean it. So here's a map of our users plotted in white on a black canvas. Pink is where work is being posted and blue is where work is being done. Freelancer.com's challenge platform specifically is what we're discussing today. Freelancer.com's challenge platform allows participants from all over the world to submit their entries that a challenge holder can then choose from. And to date, there have been over 1.5 million challenges posted and millions of dollars paid out in prizes. And that brings us to our challenge today and the prizes to be won for this challenge. So we'll very soon be hearing from Dr. Sam Yunis about the challenge background and the requested outcomes. But here's what's at stake. Okay, so this challenge here offers a total prize purse of 50,000 US dollars. The main purse here being 42,500 US dollars, broken down into the top prize for the best solution of 20,000 US dollars. 15,000 US dollars for the second place, and $7,500 for third place. We also have an additional purse of $6,000 for novel approaches, and that includes 2,500 US dollars for first place, 2,000 US dollars for second place, and 1,500 US dollars for third place. And lastly, we have up to three $500 prizes for business recognition awards for businesses who enter and get their solutions tested against the dataset but are unable to provide NASA with a license to use. And of course, as always, please note that only submissions that meet the challenge and eligibility requirements will be eligible for these awards. All right, so that's a nice chunk of cash up for grabs for you today. And so how do you get your hands on those prizes? So with that, I would like to introduce Dr. Sam Yunis, our challenge holder, who will be telling us a little bit more, but a bit about Dr. Yunis before I turn things over to him. After earning a master's in aerospace engineering and a PhD in mechanical engineering, Dr. Yunis worked for NASA for over 30 years. There he served as a lead on multiple teams in the area of launch services and spacecraft, including most recently the structural dynamics team and the commercial crew program at the Langley Research Center. Dr. Yunis' work focuses primarily on loads and dynamics, as well as vibrations and acoustic environments in expendable launch vehicles, also known as ELVs. He's worked on many ELVs, including the Titan, Delta, Ares, and supported over 50 launched spacecrafts, including Cassini, the Mars mission, and Pluto New Horizons. Dr. Yunis has earned many honors and awards from NASA for his work on ELVs, including a Kennedy Space Center Award for outstanding technical leadership, an Exceptional Achievement Medal for his work on constellation programs, and an Outstanding Leadership Medal for his contributions to the success of NASA spaceflight launch programs. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Sam Yunis. Sam, you have the floor.
Thanks, David. You can hear me okay?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Yeah, and while I'm sharing my screen, thanks to everybody who joined today and is trying to participate in this challenge. I'm really excited that you're going to give this a try. So let me talk for a few minutes, share with you what this is all about, and maybe a little more detail than you have seen before. But Pyroshock on spacecraft and launch vehicles is a real problem. The reason we use them in space application is the reliability. If you provide the electrical spark to an explosive, it will fire and it will separate the structure. And we want to do that for our stage separations and other deployments. Unfortunately, this reliability comes with a cost of shock waves traveling through the structure and potentially damaging many things, but in particular avionics and electronics, breaking those parts. So the way we design for those typically is using these semi-empirical methods derived in about 1970 for NASA. I think they're used fairly uniformly, maybe around the world, but which takes into account how far the shock has to travel and what kind of structure it has to go through, and what kind of joints it has to go through. But many tests since that time have proven that this semi-empirical technique is not that great. It's better than zero, but it's not great. So what we want to do is advance the field of prediction. And we all know finite element analysis is a very robust field, but it stays to the lower frequencies, the first few or 100 modes or so. But for shock, we really need to push the spectrum to a much higher frequency. And with that comes some complications. So that's the motivation for this. Okay. So to support the development of more capability of prediction, we've designed the ShockSat, I want to say project, and it's more than this challenge. But this challenge, which I call ShockSat 1, is this piece of hardware that you can see, and this has been a piece of hardware we've tested. And the goal of this particular aspect of the project was to get unquestioned test data. In other words, have a simple structure with a finite model that we understood and we could correlate, and high quality shock data from that structure. So those are the three things you need to do a prediction and a comparison, because so many times what we see in shock prediction is it won't match, the shock analysis won't match the test data, and then the analyst begins to blame the finite element model, or the data wasn't good. And we want to take that out and really make it sure it was focused on the analysis. So that is the data set we've been provided for this challenge. And I will show you a couple more things. Okay, so I think you all have these pictures somewhere in your delivery, but on the left, you can see the actual test article with the accelerometers attached to it, hanging on the bungee cord in the lab. The actual impacts and shocks. Can you see my mouse? I don't know, can people see my mouse?
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
Okay. The actual hammer tests we provided were down in this corner and right here. And then the actual point source pyrotechnic explosive was right here in this corner. This structure was designed to have some features that were worthwhile. One is it has a joint in it, a bolted joint, and you can see the detail of that here. It is not a perfect bolted joint, so it has some complications. It has these two flanges that are curved. That's reflected in the finite element model. Up near the top, you can't see it here, but if you look in the top, you would see there's a cross. And then at two locations, you can see weld lines here. There's welded bulkheads. So we have a material change across here from steel to aluminum. And then finally at the top, we have some struts going to a heavy plate. These particular masses here were just added to improve the mode shapes. They are a complication that we'll have to deal with, but hopefully not too much. So what we have is all the features we want in a very simple structure with no secondary secondary hardware. We didn't attach avionics boxes or anything like that to this. to start simple. And so the CAD for this has been provided, as well as the finite element model for this. Okay, but before that, I guess I want to share with you the data acquisition. I explain here what the data acquisition system is, and the accelerometers are all PCB shock accels that ranged anywhere from 10,000 to 100,000 Gs. And they are all good to 10,000 Hertz, up to plus or minus 1 dB, and plus or minus 3 dB for 25 kilohertz. The actual internal resonance is 35 kilohertz in the accels, but we're only asking for 10 kilohertz, so that's good to plus or minus 1 dB. The acquisition is 1 million samples per second with delta sigma anti-aliasing, so we feel pretty good about the data. We actually had one accel or triac accel not on the structure. It was up above here. You can't see it in the picture. And that was to make sure the acoustic energy from the explosive didn't drive the structure, and it didn't. So we know it's all from the point source itself. So we feel pretty good about the data. In this figure, you can see the red dots. The red dots are channels that we have not provided to you. We've provided the responses of all the black channels here in this table, but these particular ones we've withheld we call a verification set. So you don't have all the answers and you can't curve fit your solution perfectly. Okay, let's see. The FEM looks like this in the picture. It has, sadly, I'm sorry for many of you, I should have done this in metric, but the industry here in the US is still in English, and I just did it in English without thinking about it. But all future ShockSat versions will be in metric. But we have a 1/4 inch or 0.64 centimeter spacing on the grid. You're welcome to change the mesh any way you want to support your solution. You can make it coarser or finer if you'd like. We ran this through a modal test up to about 250 Hertz. We got data. We tried to get the modes correlated up to about 200 Hertz. Granted, we're asking for 10,000, but our thinking is that the structure is fairly simple. And in this 200 Hertz, we have captured the motion of every piece of structure in here. And by getting that close to a diagonal on a cross orthogonality matrix, that this will continue on up. One thing we did note in this test is that there's this pink line is a welded bulkhead. It has a damping material on it, sorbethane. Perhaps it wasn't attached well, or we don't know. We have the mass accounted for, but we don't see any damping from that. We thought we would have some, but we didn't. And the final thing I will tell you is if you somehow feel like the final model is not addressing your analysis, that in our studies and our final correlation effort, we found that most of the biggest changes came from these weld lines on the sides. You can see one here as well. This is 2 sheets of metal bent and then welded on opposite corners. But the thickness of that weld line makes a big difference on this cross orthogonality. So we've done our best to make it good. It would take, you could do more studies on that if you want. But we feel pretty good about where it stands now. And we think it's better than any other sort of spacecraft or structure is done with that kind of modal density. Okay, to the data we gave you, we did some impact testing. As I said, we hit it down in this corner and this corner. We gave, I believe, 6 or 7 versions of that testing. You can see the hammer here. This is a modal hammer, so it recorded force. We saw about 2,000 Gs down here where we actually hit it. We did about 4 to 6 hits for every test just to get statistical convergence on the data, because we know their shock may have some statistical properties to it, and so we wanted to make sure we got enough data for that. So for the hammer, it was easy to keep going. So we did 4 to 6. We tried for 6, but we didn't always get 6. And then we recorded all the data. And then we have a video of every hit, and this is a picture extracted from one, so we can see exactly where we hit it. And that's reflected in the spreadsheet you've been provided. So some early observations. Of course, we have quite a bit of attenuation as we go up We would expect that. We have distance, we have joints, we have bulkheads where the energy splits the path. We have some amplification at lower frequencies, as with some of the modal response, where sometimes the low frequency is higher up here than it is down here, just due to the modal response. And the other thing you have is that some of the data appears counterintuitive. And of course, we hit down here at the red dot. And if we look at, and this is color coded, so the red dot, the yellow dot, and the black dot, and you can see it goes red, and then orange here, and then black is back up. So there's some contraindicated data, not what we would expect. I have some suspicions why that is, not that it's bad data, but why it is in the structure, but I don't want to give you guys any bias by suggesting why that is. As you can see in this plot, though, this is a shock response spectrum, or the SRS. That's our default. I think that's universal across the world for shock at these days. I know there's much work to be done, being done to change that, but that's where we stand today. Okay. Okay, the pyro tests themselves, you can see this is where they were. They're NASA standard detonators, is what the NSD stands for. They're down in this corner, all four of them. A big explosion happens here. And we have very repeatable data on this, much more than the hammer tests. You can see down here, these are for some location. I don't remember which one. Oh, it says channel 26, so it's near here. It is all four are almost on top of each other. We, like I said before, these channels have, some of these channels have a 10,000 G limit within plus or minus 1 dB. Well, we clipped on some of those at 10,000 Gs, but what we found was that the when we filtered the data down to 10,000 hertz or 15,000 hertz, we were well below that. So we suspect this is the resonance in the Excel. We're not looking for 35,000 hertz data. We're looking for under 10,000 hertz. And this 15,000 hertz low pass filter shows good data. So we feel pretty good about this. We're actually very good about this pyroshock data. Okay, so that's all the background. So here we are at this challenge, and we really have what I would call several desired outcomes, which is the end state from this. In the fantasy world, we would have somebody come forth that I'm not aware of and say, I can do this, and here's how, and we have a method that's as good as finite element analysis in terms of people trusted. So that would be fantastic. In the second case, I would hope to see somebody who's pushing the envelope of what can be done, and maybe their prediction isn't perfect, but it has a lot of room to grow and become something special. And third objective is just through the submissions of this, it's a good survey of what I would call the hidden state of the art. Many people present at conferences, some people don't, but I don't have time to go to every conference. And so this provides an opportunity to see what some of the leading people are thinking on this topic. Those are my desired outcomes here. Lastly, I will say the challenge deliverables, what we expect from you is, again, everything's going to be based on the shock response spectrum that you've been looking at. We will take 6th octave bands, which we've provided for you as specific frequencies between 10 and 10,000, 100 and 10,000 hertz. And each frequency will compute a delta dB, and then we will, so that we'll have that for every frequency, every 6th octave frequency, and we'll take the root mean square of those errors in dB across all frequencies, and then across all verification locations, those 10 Excels I said we didn't include for you guys. And that will be a final number. So that's like a single number boiling down your entire prediction. And that's easy for us to begin the sorting process. So, and of course, if you know anything about RMS, the root mean squared, you'll know that the biggest difference is going to be the most costly one. So pay attention to that. It's better to have everything close than have one big outlier, which will destroy your RMS. And then, of course, as we get to evaluating top applicants or top people in the top scores. Then we'll dive in deeper, maybe into the spectrums and what did it actually look like to compute your number. Okay, David, that's all I was going to share today. I think that's a good summary of where we stand. So if you want to take over.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, Sam. And guys, reminder that if you do have any questions for Sam, please get them into the Q&A panel. And coming back to this, so let's go over the challenge timeline. Okay, so to start off, the challenge has already launched and it's live right now as of January 26th, 2022. And what that means is you are able to access the challenge link and the full challenge brief. And you can also add your comments or questions on the public clarifications board. Once you are ready to submit your entry, you have until May 1st, 2022 at 5 p.m. Eastern Time to submit your entry. Judging will follow that between May 1st and June 15th, 2022, with the awards announcements on June 15th. Okay, so here's how you can participate, and we've simplified this into an infographic for you. So step one, you will have to create an account on freelance.com. As we mentioned earlier, you will need an account on freelance.com in order to submit your entry, so make sure that you go ahead and create one as soon as possible. Step two, read the full challenge brief. So there's a specific link on the challenge page where you can see the full version of the challenge brief on Box. And so there's a lot of information there for you in that brief, so make sure you read that in full and ensure that you are eligible to participate. Step three is an important one, so that is to register, and once again, there's a link for you in that challenge brief. Step four, work on your entry after registration is approved and you receive the sample project data. Step five, ask questions. There's a public clarifications board on the challenge page near the bottom where you can ask your questions, so make sure you make use of that. And then step six, of course, is to submit your entry before the submission deadline. Now, please do not wait till the very last minute to submit your entry. So for one, if you submit your entry within a reasonable amount of time before the deadline, freelance.com can help you ensure that your entry is complete. Additionally, you may be required to update your profile on freelance.com before you're able to actually submit. So don't leave it to the very last minute where you won't have time to do that. So get your entries in on time. Lastly, before the live Q&A, here's a quick summary on eligibility. Keep in mind that I am summarizing this and oversimplifying this and rushing through this because of the webinar, but please take your time to read this in detail on the challenge page. Okay, number one, by participating in a freelancer.com challenge, each participant must agree to abide by freelancer eligibility policies, freelancer user agreement, and freelancer copyright infringement policies. Each participant must also complete and comply with the freelancer KYC, Know Your Customer program. All team members must meet freelancer eligibility policies. All team members must be at least 18 years old. The team lead must be eligible to receive payment under the laws of the United States. U.S. federal sanctions prohibits participation from certain countries. NASA and employees of challenge partners are not eligible to participate. Federal employees acting within the scope of their employment are not eligible to participate. Any individual or entity associated with the development or administration of this challenge is ineligible to compete. Government contractors working on the same or similar projects are ineligible to participate in this challenge. And lastly, funds from U.S. or foreign government organizations should not be used to directly fund the development of a solution to this challenge. Solutions that were previously developed with government federal funds or where government federal funds were utilized to prepare the submissions or solutions are prohibited. All right, so that brings us to the final portion of this webinar, which is a live Q&A period. So joining us today as panelists will be Alex from LMI, and of course we have Dr. Yunis here with us too for Q&A. So while you are getting your questions in, a reminder, get those questions in via the Q&A panel. We'll kick off with a popular question here regarding participating from a specific country. So can I participate from this country or that country? So make sure you check that link, and the link is available to you on the challenge page. So if your country is not eligible, you cannot compete as an individual. However, you can collaborate with a team whose team lead is from a designated country or the US. So the team must still abide by the following. Submissions must still originate from either the US or a designated country, or have been substantially transformed in the US or designated country prior to delivery. Also check that link there to ensure that your country is not under any country-specific sanctions. Another question regarding registration. How do I register for this challenge? To register, create an account on freelance.com. Fill out the registration form that is accessed in the challenge page and the challenge link. Okay, do we have any live questions? Okay, so we got a question here. I saw that one of the things that would be included is an example Python script detailing how to deal with the data. Where can we find this? I couldn't find it within data folder sent on Box. Alex, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm looking through the folders right now. It looks like it might be missing. So I apologize for that. And I appreciate you calling that out. So I'll double check that folder, but we may have forgot to include the Python script.
Alex?
Mhm.
Sorry, in the original version, maybe it didn't make it up there. Those scripts were in the test data Pyro point sources.
Yeah, they're in that folder on my local drive, but it looks like they're not in that folder in the box version. So apologize to the contestants. We'll go ahead and update that and make sure those files end up in the right folder. So thanks for calling that out, and apologies for that not being there.
Okay, perfect. Any other live questions? So if not, are there any non-monetary awards? Tiff, Anna, do one of you guys want to answer that one?
Yeah, so all competitors that whose solution exceeds the accuracy benchmark will be presented with a certificate of achievement from NASA. So that would be the non-monetary award that's also associated with this challenge.
Okay, perfect. And what specifically does a participant submit? Is it code? Is it a white paper? Alex, do you want to talk a little bit to that?
Absolutely. So you'll submit your answer through a summary of your answer through the submission form. And then there also is a file you'll see that is your a template for your submission. So that will have, as Sam said, the missing channels and then also the frequencies we're looking in for each test. And so it'll tell you the first three fields of which test are we looking at, which channel are we looking at, and which frequency you're looking at. And then you'll provide us the SRS response at that level. And that'll be the bulk of your submission that we use to test the accuracy.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Any other questions? So question in the Q&A chat, how can we find this data, the data that it need? Tiff, do you want to take that?
Yeah, of course. So once you have completed your registration, the link is on the challenge page. Once you've submitted the registration form, someone on our team will confirm your registration, and then with that confirmation email, you will then receive a link to all the data.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Guys, we have quite a bit of time here left for live Q&A, so anybody else with a question, please get those in. If not, we might end this early. So keep in mind, this is your chance to ask any questions to both Alex and Sam. Sam being the challenge holder in this case, the challenge owner. So last chance, going once, going twice. Maybe someone's typing a really long question. And okay, if you have any other questions, please make sure to get them in on the challenge page. So that's your opportunity to also ask your questions. So you can do that on the challenge page. But with that, we're going to close things off. Good luck to everybody. And thank you for joining this webinar. And you will get the recording. Everybody who has registered will get the recording to watch this afterwards. Right. So thank you, Dr. Yunis. Thank you, Alex. Thanks, Tiff. Thanks, Anna. And we'll end things there.